This is a Fox News alert. Justice Department official Bruce Ohr right now facing questions on Capitol Hill amid new revelations about his numerous contacts with the author of the infamous Trump dossier, ex-British spy Christopher Steele. This is Outnumbered. I'm Katie Pavlich, and here today, Fox News correspondent Molly Line, Fox News contributor Lisa Booth, former director of strategic communications for Hillary Clinton, Adrian Elrod, and joining us on the couch today for the first time, Christian Whiten, former senior State Department advisor for President Donald Trump and George W. Bush, and senior fellow at the Center for National Interest. You are outnumbered for the first time.
Welcome. Thank you. Great to be here.
We're very happy to have your expertise in the State Department for President Bush and President Trump here today.
Yeah.
So,
couple things that are on your level of experience with this show today.
Yeah, we've got just a couple things, so we will get to the news as soon as we get to it. All right, here's video of DOJ official Bruce Ohr this morning heading into a closed-door interview before the House Oversight and Judiciary Committees. Much of that interview expected to focus on the anti-Trump dossier, which was being funded by the DNC and Hillary Clinton during the 2016 campaign. Fox's chief intelligence correspondent Catherine Herridge catching up with Ohr in the hallways of Capitol Hill. Watch.
Mr. Ohr, we have a series of questions from Fox News. Mr. Ohr, who authorized your contact with the FBI? Did anyone within the Justice Department know you were contacting the FBI as a back channel for Christopher Steele, the British spy?
Not much interest in answering any questions. Ohr has links to Fusion GPS, the opposition research firm behind the Trump dossier. Glenn Simpson, co-founder of Fusion GPS, hired Steele, and Ohr's wife, Nellie, also worked for Fusion GPS as a contractor during the 2016 campaign. Republican Mark Meadows taking part in the interview today, saying that he believes 99% of DOJ and FBI workers are patriots, but the actions of some officials should raise alarm bells. Watch.
I think our republic in the integrity of the FBI and DOJ is at stake. We have about 7 or 8 that took things into their own hand, and so it's the credibility of really Lady Justice that should have a blindfold, and yet we're seeing that they were peeking and trying to tilt justice one way or another based on their own political bias.
So, Christian, we'll go to you first and get your take on this as a former employee of the government. It's probably not a good thing that he's getting hauled up from his perspective to answer these questions. We're going to hear a little bit about what happened based on what we are told by Congress in answering the questions. But what is your perspective about what's going on today?
Yeah, it's never good if you're a bureaucrat to suddenly be on the front of newspapers and being featured in every news story, at least anyone who's bothering to report this. This is part of the 99% of the FBI being patriots, I think, is a great statistics, because if this type of phony evidence were to arrive at an FBI field office out in real America, it would have been discounted. The Steele dossier would have never seen the light of day. Average FBI agents have to meet very high standards of evidence. And yet you see, again, with Ohr and his colleagues, the FBI lovers, a politicized headquarters of the FBI, and not just one that was there under President Obama, one that has continued under Jeff Sessions, who has sort of not ever gotten control of this department.
So, Lisa, Bruce Ohr is there today voluntarily, but there could have been a question of subpoena moving forward if he wasn't willing to come testify behind closed doors about his involvement with the dossier and Christopher Steele.
Right, and lawmakers have been trying to get him to talk, I think, for about 9 months now. And the reason why Bruce Ohr is of such interest is because his connections to the unverified dossier that was used to obtain a FISA warrant on Carter Page. And those connections are serving as an intermediary between Christopher Steele, the author of the dossier, and the FBI, even after he was fired for violating FBI rules by leaking to the press, and also his wife, Nellie Ohr, that worked for Fusion GPS. And what I am certainly interested in is the fact in documents that were turned over to Congress, Ohr had written that Christopher Steele said that Comey's firing made him nervous that that would expose them. So what are you worried about being exposed? And you can look at things about, Nellie Ohr, the fact that he was fired, still being used as a source. Troubling, he failed to write that his wife worked for Fusion GPS in ethics forums. Rod Rosenstein also wasn't aware that he was serving as an intermediary. So there are a lot of things here that I think Congress are going to try to get to the bottom of.
And there's a question of the funding here, Adrian, and the connection to the Clinton campaign. Is it appropriate for someone who is working in the Department of Justice to be in contact with an opposition research firm that was being paid by the Clinton campaign?
Well, we do know that his wife worked there, right? So, like, Washington, D.C. is a small place. There's a lot of people who
but directly the tie to the Clinton campaign in terms of the funding going for the dossier.
It was, again, we've talked about this so many times. It was opposition research, which was in a dossier. So, again, you're using facts here when you're using fact-based evidence that is backed up by citations, which is what was in this dossier.
Are you saying the dossier is true? Because that's been proven.
I'm saying, well, no,
false.
but there are absolutely things in the dossier that are true. Absolutely.
Like what?
But I mean, we're talking about Bruce Ohr right now.
Right, and Bruce Ohr is connected to the dossier through his wife, who helped fund the research and do the research.
But here's the
about
point.
The Clinton campaign and their involvement with the Justice Department under Obama to go after an opposition party.
Here's the point that I think that we need to be looking at here. Why are Republicans holding this hearing today in a closed-door format, right? If they really think that Bruce Ohr has a lot to say, then open it up. Let's be transparent. Let's have an open hearing as opposed to a closed-door hearing. I mean, look, we'll see what happens today from this hearing. We'll see if Republicans leak anything out or if they, give a public statement post the hearing. But again, I think this is just another.
But isn't it a conflict of interest if his wife worked for Fusion GPS and he's still serving as an intermediary after Christopher Steele was fired with the FBI?
I don't think it. I think absolutely. I don't think it's a conflict of interest at all because I think that
Why do you think he failed to put that on ethics forms, though?
I think, well, he probably should have. Again, there's a lot of information that we need to know, but I think it's completely unfair to tie him to something just because his wife was involved in something.
Well, this does seem to be the beginning of the fact-finding behind closed doors.
But I think that this
we have
is
an interview coming up in the next hour with Congressman Darrell Issa, who's been in there, and of course I would imagine he's asking a lot of questions about conflict of interest, about potential biases, and just kind of the fact-finding here. We know that Christopher Steele got the boot in 2016 in November, and yet information was still being funneled. And Bruce Ohr, we know from some text messages that Catherine Herridge, through her exceptional reporting, has brought to light, had showed that there was some communication still going on.
I want to get to Congressman Mark Meadows and what he wants to ask Bruce Ohr, and then I'm going to get Christian's reaction.
I think that later reporting today would suggest that perhaps the involvement, who authorized Bruce Ohr to get involved, if there was someone who did that, those are the critical questions that have to be answered.
Christian, your reaction?
Yeah, who did what when? I mean, really, how this thing was set in motion. The dossier was fundamentally fake. It had fake information that Donald Trump was compromised. It said that people were places that they weren't, like in Prague. That was used to send spies into the Trump campaign. And just to circle back to an earlier point, all of this activity at the Justice Department should be known by now. We're a year and a half into the Trump administrations. And again, Jeff Sessions, and it's not just the Russia thing. He's been fundamentally disappointing on a number of things, like going after sanctuary cities, antitrust against these big guys in Silicon Valley, enforcing the Second Amendment and judicial things. It's really just sort of a mess over there at the Justice Department.
Also, to Adrian's earlier point, I don't think we know if we don't know what conversations happened behind the scenes with congressional investigators and Bruce Ohr and his team. So I don't think we know if he would have even accepted speaking into an open forum in an open hearing. So I mean, that could also be part of.
And you can also be dealing with classified information, which is why maybe Congressman wanted to have an open conversation behind closed doors, also without the media fanfare that comes with these open hearings. As we saw when Peter Strzok testified, you had Democrats standing up and applauding during the hearing and doing everything they could.
And it takes some of that political drama away and
take it away and try to get to the substance and the questions.
But we also know that when Republicans have held a lot of these closed door hearings, information is selectively leaked out, and that's why I think
Adam Schiff never leaks anything.
That's why I think it's important that you have these open hearings when possible.
Christian, I think you want to respond to her, and then we'll move on to the next topic.
I think the more that we get out, this may have actually been at Ohr's risk. He is supposedly playing ball to an extent with the investigators. We'll see after today. But yeah, we do need to get all the facts on this out in the public and understand why the Obama administration decided to spy on the Trump campaign based on phony evidence.
Okay, all right.
And the public, of course, interested as well, so hopefully we will get a few details out of there, maybe perhaps later on today. Michael Cohen's lawyer, Lenny Davis, backing off two bombshell claims that he made about President Trump in an interview with the Washington Post. Davis now admitting he was the anonymous source in a July CNN story that reported Cohen had privately claimed President Trump knew in advance about that infamous Trump Tower meeting between Donald Trump Jr. and some Russians. Also the source on that story for the Post. Here is Davis making those claims last week. Watch. And Davis is now expressing regret for his role in all of this, saying, quote, I should have been more clear that I could not independently confirm what happened. I regret my error. Davis also saying he can't corroborate his claim that Cohen has information suggesting Trump knew in advance about Russian hacking of the DNC servers during the 2016 election, saying, I'm not sure. There's a possibility that's the case, but I am not sure. So to kick things off, Lisa, I want to start with you. Is he just using and abusing the press? Should they have seen this coming? He's a longtime partisan.
Well, I think he's full of it, obviously. And if we're just being honest, yeah, he's completely full of it. And also, yeah, I mean, I think he understands that the press hates Trump so much that they'll pretty much report whatever is given to them that's negative to President Trump. But I think the big thing here is that we keep seeing these bombshell stories that would dramatically change sort of the way that the entire Russia investigation is viewed that end up being wrong. And you go back to even with ABC Brian Ross reporting that President Trump as a candidate told Flynn to talk to the Russians when really it was when he was president-elect, which is basically standard operating procedure and isn't even a story. Or CNN with Donald Trump Jr. somehow that he had access to the WikiLeaks dump before it was released, when in fact it was after, when everyone in the world had access to the WikiLeaks dump. So we just keep seeing these really big stories that would potentially change the way all this is viewed that end up being wrong. And so I think when President Trump says fake news, these stories just solidify that and bring people into his camp that are like, yeah, you're right. There is fake news out there.
And Lisa, to your point, Christian, I want to bring you in. These were the stories that a lot of Democrats were waiting for. See, I knew it. Trump knew about the meeting. We knew it all along. Look, here's the proof. And then, no, not the case. And it's walked back.
Right. And fundamentally, you had just this hope that there was some collusion between Trump and Russia that has gone by the wayside, essentially. And so then there was this great hope that Trump's personal lawyer would have all these goods, and now he's under pressure and he'll spill them to the press. That's the hope. And then you see the reality. You know, it's so weird in the first place, maybe not so much, that Michael Cohen, very interesting guy. I mean, if you were writing a political novel and wrote this guy in, your editor would say that's too over the top.
Like,
Take
there's
it
so
out.
many characters, really, in the whole saga.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, someone who taped their client, who charged AT&T $600 grand for insight on their client. I mean, I'd hate to think of what a lawyer that I've used would do that. And then hiring Lanny Davis, who is, a political operative who worked for the Clintons, who is sort of an attack dog at times for the Clintons. It's really, and then, of course, to plead guilty for something that's actually not a crime, the campaign finance violations that he pled guilty of, not a crime. And really what he decided is to play to the left. He's going to become a poster child for the left, and maybe that'll get him a lighter sentence somehow from Mueller, from the term prosecutors up here, and just doesn't really seem to be working.
Well, President Trump did warn people against using Michael Cohen as a lawyer.
Yeah, he did. My favorite thing about this is Lanny Davis trying to say that he made a mistake when, based on the fact that he is a Clinton operative and has been for 20 years, the idea that this was a mistake is bogus.